Hi, I'm christenareckless and welcome back to my channel. Today we are at the Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Reserve and I'm super excited. This is the second time I've been here and I'm excited to bring you along with me. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Obviously I loved it, that's why I'm here again. So without further ado, let's get this started. Let's go. First things first, we gotta go check in. I gotta go sign a waiver because I'm doing the VIP encounter. I don't know if I can take you with me, but I'm going to try because I get to get up close and personal with the wolves. And I'm very excited about that. Anyway, let's go check in. All right, I am checked in and now we're just waiting on the tour. Here we go.
Please silence your cell phones. You are more than welcome to take pictures with your phones, your cameras, things like that. But we are going to be staying behind a 3-bar barrier fence. If we see you throw anything in, even if it's a rock, a stick, a leaf, anything like that, we will unfortunately have to stop the tour and send everybody home. And we don't want to have to do that today. Again, it's just for the safety of our animals because we have to make sure that those wolves didn't get something that they shouldn't have. I know we're going to be talking a lot about wolves today, and we are going to start that off with a history lesson. I know you didn't all come here for a history lesson, so I apologize. When we talk about gray wolves, the gray wolf is actually found throughout most of the northern hemisphere. So we are actually going to take ourselves back to about the 13th and 14th century, which is like, oh, why are we going so far back? And we're also going to go to Europe because unfortunately, this is where our big bad wolf stories originated. So think way back into Europe. We had a little thing called the bubonic plague. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a very, very deadly disease that is carried by tiny little fleas on mice and rats for the most part. However, it was responsible for killing about 1/3 of Europe's population. And unfortunately, they didn't have a good way to handle all of those deceased individuals. So we ended up with a lot of mass burial pits outside of town. And unfortunately, that invites a lot of scavengers, and that included wolves. So over time, people started seeing wolves scavenging on human remains, and eventually they decided, oh my gosh, it must be the wolves that are bringing this death and disease upon us. And that's really where those big bad wolf stories originated. And unfortunately, we have kind of held those stories to heart ever since, and we have unfortunately made wolves pay for it quite a bit. So Europeans did extirpate wolves throughout much of their range in Europe, and then as we started to cross the pond and we started arriving in North America, we saw a lot of things here that we liked, and we saw some things that we didn't like. We saw a lot of indigenous people. We didn't want to see them here, so we unfortunately got rid of a lot of our indigenous people, and we got rid of a lot of our wildlife. Wolves, grizzly bears, bison, those are some of the animals that were on the list. But as we started arriving here in North America, we used to have about 500,000 gray wolves. So what we ended up doing is in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was passed. It was signed into law by Richard Nixon, which was really awesome. And in 1974, wolves were actually one of the first animals listed on the Endangered Species Act. Unfortunately, for the gray wolf, what ended up happening, they didn't come back all on their own. So after a lot of political back and forth, we finally started to reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone and central Idaho. And they were listed on that endangered species list for quite some time, up until about 2011 when they were delisted on a budget bill, and we started treating them like we did back in the 1900s again. So I'm going to flip this map here. I'm going to show you, this is where we're at today. So you can see that our wolves have not come back quite as much as we had hoped. We do have a relatively stable population in the northern Rockies, except northern Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming are all aggressively hunting and trapping gray wolves. They have unlimited hunting seasons. Wyoming, you can kill wolves in 85% of the state. You're even allowed to run them over with snowmobiles. And unfortunately, that is completely legal. But there is currently a bill, Livestock and Pet Protection or Safety Act, and that is trying to be passed by a representative here in Colorado, Bobert, and Representative Tiffany in Wisconsin, and they are trying to delist the gray wolf on a national level and then block them from ever being listed again, even if their population drops so low. Colorado, I do want to mention just briefly, back in 2020, we did pass Proposition 114, which allowed for wolves to be reintroduced into our state. We do currently have 24 wolves here, so not a whole lot. We have reintroduced a total of 25. We've had some that have reproduced. We've had some, unfortunately, that have passed away. So that number does fluctuate, but CPW is crossing their fingers that we might actually have up to 4 dens for currently, so we might see a little bit of a wolf pup boom here soon. Now, unfortunately, this is a steel foothold trap or a leg hold trap, sometimes called the bone crusher. This is still legal in 42 out of our 50 states. Colorado, thankfully, is one of the states that this is not allowed in. I can tell you if I were to step in that, or if my dog were to step in that, I actually am not strong enough to open it. And that is a small trap. This is a coyote trap. But a lot of these states, like Nevada in particular, you can have this trap set out and an animal can be stuck in that up to 96 hours legally. A lot of times these guys will end up sitting in these for 96 hours with no food, water, shelter, and they do pass away. And it's estimated that 73% of animals that get stuck in these are actually non-target species. I know this is the worst part of the tour. I'm not here to depress you, I promise, but it is our job to make sure that you know what is going on. Because if we didn't tell you about all of this, a lot of people wouldn't know about it. So there are ways that you can make change, and that is contacting your representatives. A lot of people want to know why we use traps. Unfortunately, a lot of times it is not just for recreation, it is also for fur. Now we do have something that has kind of replaced this in some areas, which is called a fur farm. So I'm not done depressing you all yet, but we can turn around and look at our foxes, and we'll talk about fur farms while at least looking at cute animals. These guys unfortunately do go through a lot of suffering. Now Zach and Zoe, the foxes that you can see, I don't think Rhett and Scarlett are showing off at all. Yep, so that is Zoe. They were originally born on a fur farm. Now Zoe did come to us pretty early. She was a rescue. And then Zach, he was actually sold to somebody as a pet. Occasionally they'll also be bred to be white, so they can sell that as Arctic fox fur. Now in the wild, of course, wolves do tend to live in packs. We have a male and a female, and that would usually be our breeding pair, which we used to call the alphas. We don't usually use that term anymore because that was a term that came from studying wolves in a captive situation, and we found out that that's not really how they behave in the wild. In the wild, the wolf pack is literally a family. It's mom and a dad, and the rest of the offspring or the rest of the wolves are going to be their offspring. So Kenai here, unfortunately, a few months ago, he lost his beautiful mate, Makui. Now, they were very, very close. They were very bonded, and that's pretty normal. For the most part, wolves will tend to stick with the same mate throughout their lifetime. Once in a while, they might find a new companion or mate if they're lost, or if there's any other drama going on. Wolf packs are just as drama-filled as human families, honestly. So unfortunately, when Makui passed away, she did pass away from a sudden heart condition. It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So the only symptom that manifests as is a sudden fatal heart attack. So we came out here one morning, found out that she had passed away, and unfortunately Kenai was just very, very upset. He was very defensive, and he is still kind of mourning her loss, but we are hoping that we will find him a new companion, as we do want our wolves to have that companionship. So in the wild, a wolf is usually only alone because they are looking for a mate or a companion. So some of the wolves that we have here in Colorado right now are still traveling a lot. We had one wolf that traveled, I think, almost 1,500 miles within 3 months. So it's a pretty big distance, but not unexpected. So they will travel far and wide looking for mates or companions of their own. So typically they stay with their family until they're about 2 years old, and then they'll go off and they'll find a new companion, and they'll establish a territory. Typically those territories are about 60 to 100 square miles. So the reason why we usually keep our wolves in male-female pairs is just so they can have that bonding experience, and then we're not having the wolves in big groups and smaller enclosures since they would have such a large range in the wild. So since Kenai is not going to show off, I do just want to briefly mention that Kenai is a British Columbian and a tundra wolf mix. So if you've been following the wolf reintroduction news, you'll know that our last 15 wolves that we brought to Colorado did come from British Columbia, and there's a misconception that these guys are bigger, faster, stronger, and more aggressive. That's not true. In fact, they're actually the exact same subspecies that we brought down in 1995 and 1996 for that Yellowstone Park reintroduction. So it's the same exact subspecies. The only major difference between them and wolves that we used to have here, which unfortunately were completely eradicated, is that they're a little bit more fluffy. And that's it. So when we talk about gray wolves, they are of course named kind of like the red foxes. They are named for that color that they have. And this color in particular is called grizzled. And so that is typically, in my mind, when I think of a wolf, but Denali is what I think of. So when we're talking about size, because people have an idea that wolves tend to be these really, really big animals, they are very, very fluffy. They're not so big weight-wise as we might believe. There's a lot of movies out there that tend to make them out to be like 175 to 250 pounds, which is not the case. The average adult male wolf only weighs about 105 pounds, and the average female wolf weighs about 80 to 85 pounds. So they're a little bit on the smaller side than our minds like us to believe, but they do grow about 5 to 6 inches of fur in the winter, so they have a lot of extra coloration. or extra fluff to them. And then they have very, very long legs, which makes them very tall. So they'll stand about 28 to 36 inches tall at the shoulder. The males do tend to be larger. So Denali here, he came to us with his brother Nanook, who you'll get to see in a little bit as well, and their friend Raven, and they are 1 year younger than Miss Rain is. So we did take Rain out for a walk. Yes, you heard that right. We do take our wolves for walks. We try and give them as much enrichment as possible. That is Coco. We will meet her soon. And so we had her out for a walk, and we took her over to the puppy pen just to see how she would act. And wolves love puppies most of the time. So as soon as Rain saw them, she went into puddle mode. She just started whining and whimpering. She curled up in a little ball. And then all of a sudden she threw up her breakfast. Now that sounds terrible, right? It's not. What that is actually regurgitation. So when wolf puppies are asking mom and dad for food, they tend to jump at their lips and their face, and that causes that regurgitation. And so Rain was just adopting them, essentially, and feeding them. So in the wild, the wolves can eat actually about 20 pounds of meat in a minute, and then they'll carry all that meat home in their tummies because they don't have grocery bags, and that's how they will get their food back to those puppies when they're so young that they're not able to travel yet. So Isa, he is our first Arctic wolf that we are going to meet, but he's a little bit of an unusual Arctic wolf. Remember I said all wolves are born dark brown or black? That includes Arctic wolves as well. But Isa came out pure white. So he was like a little cute little puff cotton ball. Cutest little guy I've ever seen. Now if that happened in the wild, he probably wouldn't have survived, because you can imagine with all the snow melting, there's all this mud and stuff like that. He would have been very, very obvious to other predators. And yes, there are things out there that will eat wolves, especially up in the northern areas like polar bears. So this guy, thankfully, was born in human care. He came to live with us. Now he's not albino, but you can see that he does have these beautiful golden eyes. All wolves are going to have golden or amber other colored eyes. They will not have blue eyes or anything like that. That's more of a dog trait, but we do think that he's leucistic. So that's just kind of like a false form of an albino. So he's not truly an albino animal. So today, while I'm feeling a little bit warm, they're still starting to shed their winter coats. Raksha and Isa especially, because they're built for life in the cold Arctic temperatures. Now the Arctic wolves usually have really dark black skin. Isa does not. He has very pink skin, but they have this really dark skin. So if he were to come down, oh, Chakra, come here. So Chakra and Orenda used to live together. However, being that they are two females, they don't usually tend to get along for too long. So after about a year, they decided that they were not going to be roommates anymore. However, they lived right next to our two brothers. So Raksha here is actually Isa's brother. And so they immediately knew each other. They always had seen each other. And we knew that these two had personalities that would match really, really well. And so they moved in together on the same day, as did Isa and Orenda. So here you can see those adaptations. Since he did come all the way down, you can see all that thick undercoat is starting to come out. They do not have mange. This is unfortunately just the way they look when they start to shed, because they do shed that once a year. All that undercoat comes out in the springtime, because again, it's hot, but it also makes way for them to grow a new fresh winter coat. So starting around August and September, they'll start getting more puffy again, with their winter coats really getting to the peak around January. And now Orenda and Isa are up. Now look, all of you got up. It's because Carissa has goodies for everybody. So Raven here, kind of like Orenda, she is one of our ambassador wolves. Now she doesn't go off site, but she loves to meet people. So she is very, very social. I would probably say in all the years I have volunteered here, about 13 years now, she is probably our most social wolf that we have. And then she lives with Nanook, who's totally opposite, but you know what they say, opposites attract. So, Nanook, very, very sweet guy. He loves his staff members that helped raise him, but he doesn't really like meeting new people, and that's okay. We have always grown up with wolves being villains in our stories, movies, TV shows, and we still treat them like villains today, even though they're really not. Wolves are very sensational, and they get really bad reps for a lot of things when they really don't deserve it. In the last 155 years, there have only been 2 attacks by wild wolves in North America, and then 1 person in the lower 48 states who has been bitten by a wolf. And that's with all these wolf reintroductions happening. It's very, very rare. Wolves want nothing to do with us, but they tend to make the news if they do happen to catch a cow or a sheep, it makes the news. Colorado loses about 115,000 cows a year. We have a livestock inventory of about 2.8 million. 115,000 of those animals, 114,000 die from disease and weather. Well, you don't hear about those. However, over Memorial Day weekend, a wolf in Pitkin County killed 2 calves, I think, and then bit another one. And so CPW went out and killed one of them. Yep. So wolves are never allowed to make a mistake, it seems like. Same thing in Michigan. I think a couple years ago, a wolf walked by in a residential area and they went out and killed a bunch of wolves in response to that. Last week, I think up here in Woodland Park, somebody got attacked by a moose. It killed his dog and he was sent to the hospital. And CPW just is like, it's okay. And that's, you know, we give a lot of leeway to other types of wildlife, but we don't usually give leeway to other animals like wolves or other carnivores. So it's just the way we have our mindset. To just kind of make a fun comparison, 13 people every year get crushed by vending machines. We're not out there banning vending machines.
Shoot a vending machine, yeah.
So to tell you a little bit how wolves do hunt, they are endurance hunters. So typically they will travel behind a deer and elk herd. They'll break them up into much smaller groups, which helps with the whole ecosystem rebounding in Yellowstone that we saw. But they'll keep those animals moving, and eventually those slower animals start falling behind. So the old, the sick, the weak, sometimes the very young, and that's usually what the wolves go with. The average age of elk that is eaten by wolves in Yellowstone is actually 15 years old. I don't even know elk live that long, quite frankly, but they do, and that is actually after their reproductive prime. So that is a really good thing. They're leaving those healthy animals to continue reproducing and making those herds stronger. These guys, they are very, very cute. You already heard Coco talking a whole lot. If you were to compare their actual song on a sonograph, it does almost sound the exact same as a whale song, which is really awesome. And then these guys are very, very flexible. So they do live in those highland areas out in New Guinea. So lots of rocks, lots of trees. And so they're super flexible to deal with that. They can actually bend their necks so much that they can touch the top of their head to the top of their back, which looks a little bit scary, but it's cool. So she's not a coyote, but she's not quite a wolf either.
Is she a husky?
She's a wolf and husky mix. So yes. So she is a wolf dog, sometimes called a wolf hybrid. However, a lot of people get these guys as pets. And I will tell you from personal experience, it's not for the faint of heart. So you can imagine, I'm gonna just compare this real quick. Let's say you get a little black lab, and as it's a puppy, you take it out, you go places, it's awesome, great pet, grows up to be a fantastic animal. You don't have to take it out every week, but when your friends wanna meet up at the brewery, he's still good to go. He says, yeah, let's go out. Great dog. You get a wolf dog, it's a little puppy, you take it everywhere because it's cool, you wanna show it off. Then it gets a little older and you start not taking it anywhere because now it's starting to get scared. It's eating all your seatbelts in the car. So eventually, let's say, hey, your friends want to go to the brewery. You can't even get your dog in the car. They are terrified of new things. Remember, we talked about neophobia. So a lot of people get wolf dogs thinking that they're going to look like wolves but act like dogs. And unfortunately, it does not work out that way. About 80% of these guys will never see their 3rd birthday. And part of the reason why is because when they hit 2, and remember, we've talked about that 2-year mark a lot. The reason why is that's because that's when they hit maturity. So they'll reach both sexual and mental maturity then, and they can go through some pretty big personality changes. So your sweet little puppy might not want to see any strangers anymore. They might be terrified of strangers, or they might be aggressive to them. They will eat all your seatbelts in the car. I mentioned this. I replaced the seatbelts in my Jeep twice. Seatbelts are $600 each to replace. They also urinate and poop in the car. They will also try and eat your cats. They will not be housebroken. They'll eat all your books. They'll eat your iPad. They'll break the window in your car. They'll break your window in your house. They'll eat your medical equipment. Anyway, in the first year that I was like, I can do this. I'd been volunteering here for 5 years. I was like, I can adopt a wolf dog. He broke about $15,000 to $20,000 worth of stuff. They are not for the faint of heart at all. Oh my gosh, she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Luna here, this innocent little girl, she was living in somebody's house. They were actually taking really great care of her, but then they got some new neighbors, and their new neighbors had chickens. And Luna said, oh, you opened Chick-fil-A right next door? Yes. So she helped herself to the chickens even on Sundays. And so unfortunately, she ended up having to come here. But that was all right because Amarok really needed a companion. And these two hit it off right away. So they get to live together. Now, Amarok, he has a really unique story too. He was actually found as a stray as well. However, what makes his story unique is he was found as a stray in Colombia. That is in South America. Gray wolves do not live in South America. So Amarok probably ended up there as part of the wildlife trade. Unfortunately, it is a $23 billion a year industry right between human trafficking, drugs, and weapons. So that is the it is the reason for the global decline in our animal populations. It's estimated that we've lost about 70% of our biomass in the last 50 years, and a lot of it is because of that wildlife trade. It took 6 months of paperwork, but he flew across here, up to Colorado, and arrived in the middle of a blizzard. There's a video on our YouTube, it's called Amarok's First Snow, and it is the cutest video you'll ever see in your life. I recommend watching it, because he was thrilled. So when we looked at our map earlier, these guys were the green dot. There's currently only 283 of them in the wild, so not very many. Now, unfortunately, the states that have them are trying to delist them, so that's Arizona and New Mexico, because again, the big bad wolf stories. It's always out there. People are terrified of wolves. They even have cages around their bus stops for their kids because they're so afraid the wolves are going to get them. There's never even been a single attack by a Mexican gray wolf on a person, but people are still afraid of them. Now, as far as the Mexican gray wolves go, they are the smallest subspecies of gray wolf, so they actually only top out around 75 to 80 pounds for boys and about 60 to 65 pounds for females. Now, they also all almost look like clones, and that's because when we finally decided to save them, there were only 7 of them left. Now, over time, through breeding, we have been able to increase that wild population, and a lot of times it is done through what is called cross-fostering or pup fostering. So they'll take puppies that are born in human care, and they'll transplant them into the dens of wild wolves. And sometimes we'll also take wild puppies and put them into human care just to keep that genetic diversity as a good mix in the wild and in human care as well. So these guys were actually born in the wild a long time ago now, and now thankfully they are no longer closely related to every other wild Mexican wolf, so they could still possibly use as part of that Saving Animals from Extinction program as breeding in human care to help those wild populations. So Shawnee, she's the one right here. She has the little bit of the floppy ears. So that is not a red wolf trait. I did just tell a couple folks who are already over here, but Shawnee just has some fluid buildup, and it does get drained by our vet, and then her ears stand up, but over time they just kind of built up again. Now, Fender, he is a very great example of a red wolf. Now again, historically, we used to have these guys all throughout the southeastern United States. There are currently only 16 of them in the wild. That is half of the number of people that are on our group right now. Now they are part of the Saving Animals from Extinction program. However, as a non-breeding facility, these guys are here for education. Now Shawnee, she's already helped contribute to saving the species. She's already had a few litters. She's 11 years old, so she's retired from that breeding program. And then Fender here, he's only 3. However, he is disqualified from the breeding program. He had a little genetic defect that required him to get neutered. So he had to get neutered, and so now he's not part of the breeding program. But these two get to live here as wonderful ambassadors for their species, and we are very proud to have them as we are the only place in Colorado that houses the American red wolf. He's like, this is a good spot to rest. Now, he is. I don't know if he'll come down. Now, usually when wolf pups are born, they're going to be born in late March through early May. April is going to be the bulk of the wolf's birth month. And then they will live with their families in that den. They are born 1 pound, blind, deaf. They stay in the den for a few weeks. As they start to get older and they start to get mobile, they start leaving the inside of the den, and then they will start getting cared for by all of the wolves in the pack. Now, Jakara is actually our second biggest wolf. He weighs 103 pounds, and he is one of my favorite babies. I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but between him and Kenai, they're both all the way up there. Yes.
Why is he so big?
That is actually a pretty average size for an adult wolf. So he just looks really tall, but like I said, he only weighs about 103 pounds.
Our dog's bigger.
Our next wolf that we see is going to be our biggest wolf.
Haven't seen much of me, but that's because you're here to learn. Deal with it.
So these guys are also our oldest wolves. So Tala is 16, She actually had a sweet 16 birthday. She even wore a little hat. I've never seen a wolf wear a hat, but Tala did not mind. And then Navi is 15 years old. In the wild, they usually only live to be about 5 to 7 years. Don't have too much more to tell you about them. We've talked so much about our wolves today. However, I do want us to all kind of come together as that wolf pack that we were talking about. And we're going to thank our wolves for their time today. And of course, we're also hoping they'll help back. So the way that we like to thank our wolves, oh yes, is by howling with them. So what we are going to do is we are going to howl like a wolf. You're going to say howl, just like that.
So on the count of 3, guys, let's give it our longest, loudest howl. 1, 2, 3. I don't know, Michelle. I feel like we can get them really going with the second one. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Let's do a second one.
All
right,
right,
try
guys.
one more time.
Even louder, even longer this time. One more good howl. 1, 2, 3.
There was a wolf doing it. A wolf did it? Yeah. Is it here?
It's on the dump. This is a non-profit organization. It doesn't get any funding from the state or the government, so this is all basically donation-based. Definitely check them out, share the love. These wolves need our help, among the other wildlife that's here. Now I'm on my way to do the meet and greet interaction VIP tour. Hopefully I can get some footage of that. So thanks for sticking around. This is fun. I just got back from the VIP encounter with Luna. Amy was tired. He didn't want to hang out, which is fine. I'm sorry I couldn't take you with me, but I will be posting photos from there in the same video. I have to wait for them, but by the time this video comes out, I will have them. Don't worry. You'll see them, I promise. I'm very excited to show you. Anyway, I know this was a bit different than what I usually do, but I do think this is something that everybody needs to know. And I think everybody needs to pay attention. This isn't normally the type of video that I make, but it is something that I truly believe in, that we need to be protecting these species, and I hope that you've seen enough in this video to make you feel the same way. If you want to support them, it is Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Center. Give them a shout out, go look at their page, donate if you can, and until next time, thanks for hanging out. I love you. Stay reckless.